I've got a little bit of a confession to make. Since sewing has become more fashionable, brands are marketing at us left, right and centre. It's becoming more and more difficult to work out what products we really need to help us progress in our sewing, if we need any at all. In my last video, I shared with you the dumbest sewing purchases that I've made. So that's sewing purchases that I bought, but actually in the end I didn't need or use them. If you haven't seen that video, I will link it down below, but it has resonated with so many of you, so I'm hoping that this video will do the same. Just a quick disclaimer, the products I'm going to talk to you about today, some are at the cheaper end, some are at the more expensive end, and you absolutely do not need any of these products. But these are products that I've bought and have worked for me and I'm really happy with. So without further ado, let's get into the items. In my last video, I talked to you about how the cover stitch machine was an excess purchase that I didn't need to make, but this first purchase in this video is very, very different. So that is my serger, which you can see just there. It's the Janome 8002 DX. And I bought this very early on in my journey. I'd probably been sewing for about 1 year and I did buy it on a little bit of a whim. Well, what had happened was I purchased another serger and I purchased it second hand. For a few months I was trying to use it and I had so much trouble with it. It just wouldn't work. I couldn't do anything to it to get it to work. I part exchanged that one for this one here. So this was bottom of the ladder in terms of cost, so it cost me £200, and it's been one of the best purchases I have ever made. So I've had it probably 4.5 years now, and I use it more than my sewing machine, if I'm honest. Absolutely love it. It is overdue a service. It's never been serviced, if you can believe that. And the light on it has gone now, but I can sew without the light, that's no problem. Threading it is a hassle that I really wish I didn't have to do, but you know, it takes 5 or 10 minutes and then it's done. I know some of you might say to thread the thread onto the old thread and pass it through, but I've never been able to get that to work for me. So I do thread it from scratch every time. Now, if money was no object, I would definitely have a Baby Lock air threading machine. And that is one of my goals, to finally have that. That machine is used so much on almost every garment that I make. I get that out, whether it's a knit or a woven. If you are debating buying a serger, I would wholly recommend that you do. I just think it's going to make sewing so much easier and your seams will look so much better. And actually sewing with it is a lot faster than the sewing machine. You can just whiz straight through it with the serger and it takes a lot longer on the sewing machine. So often I will use the serger instead of the sewing machine. The next smart purchase I made that I want to share with you is my ham. So I never had any interest in having a ham initially. I used a rolled up towel because it just did the same thing essentially. But I was perusing a shop close to where I live and I was in there and they were selling this for £5. Now I hadn't seen them cheaper than about £18, so £5 was a really good bargain, so I snapped it up. And that was on a whim. I hadn't gone out planning to buy one, I just happened to come across it and I've used it so much since then. So what a ham is used for is when you've sewn darts and you need to iron them afterwards, you put this under the fabric and then the dart will curve around the curve of the ham and you'll be able to iron it without leaving all sorts of creases on the garment. It's also pretty good if you've got to iron the arm side or the neckline or any curve really. This works super well. So in my last video, I talked to you about some curve rulers that I did not use. They were the little ones that are used for bra making, etc. And I bought them and they've never been used. Well, I was going through a period of buying loads and loads of curve rulers right when I began sewing, before I was even using them. And I've got 3 here that I do use a lot. This was my first one that I bought, and I liked it, but it wasn't really the shape I was looking for. It wasn't the traditional shape. You can mark your apex with that hole there. You can mark your seam line. It's even got holes for buttons. There's a lot you can use this for. Now, I do use this a fair amount. I then went on to buy this one, which is a lot smaller and a lot bendier, but more along the traditional shape that I was looking for. I think I paid like £2 for it or something, but I do use this quite a lot. And the other one I use a lot, and actually this is the one I use the most, is this one. This is a traditional shape. This is the shape I was looking for. It's actually not the official pattern cutting shape. There is one called a Pattern Master, I think, and I would like that, but I absolutely cannot justify buying that when I've got so many curves already. And this gets so much use, but sometimes this is a little bit long. If I'm trying to measure something here or alter something, this can get in the way if I need it close to me. And so that's when the little one comes out. Sometimes neither of them will do, and I use this one, but all 3 of these get so much use, and I love them, and I would not be without them. So the next item I want to talk to you about is my rotary cutter and my healing mat. Now, I can't show you my healing mat just here because it's too big, but I'll insert a cutaway to it. So I bought my first mat very early on in my journey, but I've also got a green one that I bought before that. So I bought it, and it's an A0 size, so it was the biggest size that I could find out of pre-cut ones. I've got a little bit of a confession to make. When I bought my green healing mat, it was described as a self-healing mat. Do you know where this is going? Well, I was convinced when you use your rotary blade and you cut on the mat, when it slices the mat, that would close up again. Basically, it would heal itself again. Am I the only one who thought that? I probably am. But I was absolutely convinced of that. And I spent probably 3 or 4 months looking at that mat, wondering why it wasn't healing itself. Oh, you have permission to laugh because I'm laughing too. It's ridiculous. So in the end, what I did is I bought another one because I thought that first one wasn't working properly. So I bought another one, and that one didn't heal itself either. And I was just like, maybe they're not supposed to heal themselves. Why are they calling it a self-healing mat when it doesn't heal itself? It's like you've broke your leg, you go to the hospital, they put a cast on and say, give it 6 weeks and this cast will fix your leg, and then they take the cast off and it's still broken. Not quite the same, but you get my drift. So anyway, the upshot is I've got 2 healing mats, or I've got 2 non-self-healing mats. I have to say scissors do have their place, and I use scissors as well, and we'll get onto that in a bit. But once I started using a rotary blade and my mat, it was a revelation, especially sewing knits or anything that was really lightweight. Being able to just go across the fabric like that was just so much easier, and it made things a lot more accurate. I know people struggle to hold these and to grasp them properly, and I went for a few, and this one is really good actually. It's a Fiskars one. I will link it down below. I'll link a few of the products down below in my Amazon affiliates, but I really like this one. It just feels nicer. It's fatter there, so it's easier to hold, and I just like it. You can get ergonomic ones as well that I don't have, but I just bought the cheap ones before and they were good, they worked, but they only lasted so long. But this one, actually this wasn't expensive. I paid £10 for this. So when I used to use scissors all the time, I'd get some cramping in my hand, and this really helped. This cost a tenner, and I wholly recommend it. The mats were a little bit more expensive, but they're totally worth it. The next thing I'm going to talk to you about is my humongous roll of tracing paper. Hold on just 1 minute. I don't know if I'm going to be able to pick this up. I'm not He-Man. Oh, there you go, I've managed it. just about. I will put some inserts in so you can see it, but there it is. That is really heavy. I got the idea to buy this from Sian from Kittenish Behaviour. She had bought one many years ago, and I saw it. I actually went to one of her workshops and I saw it there, and I was like, that's a really good idea. So I'd been to Sian's workshop, I saw it there, and I really wanted one, and that was because I was using A4 tracing paper, or sometimes I was also using greaseproof paper that I bought from the pound shop or the dollar shop, but sellotaping it down, I could never get it to sellotape, or if I glued it, it wouldn't stay glued down, and it was just a complete nightmare. And where I'm plus size, I need quite a bit of space. So when I came across this paper here, I was smitten with the idea. I bought that maybe three and a half years ago now, and I'm only halfway through it. So I paid £60 for it, and it was free shipping. I think it's a little bit more expensive now. I think it might be like 75 or something like that. I'll put it on screen, whatever price it is. But I've used about half of it, and it's lasted me let's say 3 years to be cautious. So it's going to last me 6 years total. So that's £10 a year. So that is absolutely fantastic. This is one of the best purchases that I have made, period. The size of it, there's different sizes that you can get, but I got 300 meters of it, and it's 90 centimeters wide. But it is so handy to have such a big area when you're tracing out. It's not tracing paper like you would have seen in school, where you can see through it. It's completely not opaque. This is slightly opaque, but when you put it up against a pattern, you can see through it. So what I'm talking to you about today is shears. So I was fed up with all my blunt cheap scissors, so I did splash out and get some gingers. I think they're called, you would call them gingers or gingers. I don't know what you call them, gingers. Got these about 3 or 4 years ago, and I used them a lot, but they're a little, can you hear that noise? Love these, and I would have just stuck with these. They come with a nice little cover like that. So I took part in a giveaway over on Instagram, and that was run by Coco Wawa Crafts. I had just commented something, then completely and utterly forgot about it. Then one day out of the blue, I got a notification to say I had won this pair of scissors. They've become quite marked. It's just a bit of a shame. But they work so well. These are Ernest Wright scissors, or shears I should say. And I looked up on the website, they're over £100, 130, something like that they cost. And I never ever would have purchased these myself, but I am so grateful that I have them. They're quite heavy, they're substantial, so if you struggle with weight, you might struggle with these, but they've got such a sharp cut and such an accurate cut. So the gingers don't get an awful lot of use, but sometimes I do use them because I don't always want to use a really heavy pair of scissors, and so I will go with these because these are a lot lighter in weight. So I use both rotary cutters and scissors, and they both serve a different purpose. Basically, if it's knit fabric or really lightweight fabric, then I will go to the rotary cutter. And sometimes I'll cut with the scissors if I need to. Maybe if I need to get into an awkward corner or something, I might do that. But they've both got uses, and I love them both. So the next thing that was a really smart purchase is something super cheap, and that is these. These are friction pens. So you can write on your fabric with these, and then you can iron it away, so heat will remove them. You have to be careful because if it gets super cold, then it will come back. And don't go marking your apex because, you know, if you have a snowstorm outside, people are going to have a great old laugh, aren't they? But I would just stick to using them in the seam allowance where possible. But these are an absolute godsend. It is so important that you test your fabric before you use it, because when I made my sienna coat, the fabric on that, I marked it, and then when I tried to iron it off, the marking just turned white. And so luckily I had realised that before I started making the garment, and it was on a scrap piece. But had I been marking the actual pattern pieces, then I might have been in some trouble when it was finished. But overall, I absolutely love these. I've tried everything. So I've tried chalk, I've tried carbon paper, I've tried tacking with thread. There's just nothing that feels very right to me apart from this. This has worked like a dream. So the next item that was a really smart choice on my behalf was something you've seen before in my videos, and that is my mini ironing board, which I've got here. So I bought this totally on a whim from IKEA many years ago. I think I paid about £4 for it. They still sell them now, so if you are interested, do pop over to IKEA and get one. I think you can get them many other places. I think Janome probably do them, and a few other places. Not sure about in America, but in the UK certainly. It's brilliant, especially for sewing and filming my sewing. I work in a very small space, and having my big ironing board out, it gets in the way sometimes. And sometimes when I'm filming a project, it might happen over a few days, and I don't want to be putting everything away every day. And so what I do is I just pop this on my table with my camera overhead, and then I just use it. And sometimes I use it when I'm not filming as well. So yeah, I still to this day use this a lot. Just a couple more things to share with you, and this one is my bias binding kit. Well, more specifically, my bias binding foot that comes within it. So that's what it looks like. So you put the binding inside this little mouth, and then you put the fabric inside the binding, and then it just sews it with no trouble from yourself whatsoever. So it totally takes the stress out of adding the bias binding. It's no good if you're doing the bias binding where you turn it under, because that's not what it's for. But if you're putting the bias binding on the edge, then this foot will really help you out. When you sew bias binding by hand, you'll sew it one side, turn it over and sew it again. So this just eliminates half of the work. So if you saw my video about productivity with chronic illness, which I will link down below, then you'll know all about my table. But I couldn't not include my table in this list of items that were really smart decisions. And that is because my table is at waist height, natural waist height, and so I'm not in pain when I'm bending over cutting out fabric. The table's also really big, so I can get a big bit of fabric on the table, which is absolutely fantastic. So it was super cheap. I paid £29 for the tabletop, and then £25 each for each trestle leg. But you could just put normal legs on it and it'll be even cheaper still. I have one more purchase to talk to you about today that was a really smart decision on my behalf. So I've left the best to last, and that is my sewing machine just there. So this is the Brother NV1880Q. Absolutely love it, and I'm so grateful that I have it. So I purchased this 3 or 4 years ago, and it was a big purchase for me. So I paid £1,000 for it. It did retail at £1,300, so I got a little bit off. I can't stress what a big purchase this was for me, but I am so grateful. I had the foresight to know that one day I wouldn't be able to go to work traditionally, and I would be probably sewing for a living, and so I invested in this. So as I stated in my disclaimer at the beginning of the video, you absolutely don't need a machine like this. You really don't, and please do not feel under any pressure to get one. But if you have the means to get one and you want one, then this is a really good machine to have. I've owned a fair amount of machines across the board in terms of pay point, and I firmly do believe with machines you get what you pay for. So I would encourage you to, if you have a budget, to spend probably at the top of that budget, because it will pay you off in the end. So I started off with my £45 IKEA machine that I talked to you about. I also have a Janome machine just up here. That's a pretty good one, but that one costs half the price of this one, and this one is twice as good in my mind. Now, you can get very good cheap machines. I think the Brother Innovis range is a really good range of machine, and they do have price points from about £200, I think £250 up to probably quite a lot higher than I paid. And I have used their cheaper end machines when I've gone on sewing workshops, and they're really good. I can't fault them. So this machine has all the bells and whistles, but that is not why I love it. People always say you don't need an expensive machine, which is true, because a lot of the time what you're paying for is extra stitches. And boy, does this come with some extra stitches. I don't use most of those stitches. Maybe I will one day, maybe I won't, but that is not why I love this machine. I love this machine because of the sewing experience it gives me. It's really hard to explain if you haven't used a machine like this, but when you put the fabric through, it feels nice while you're sewing. Also, my machine auto detects the tension that I need, so I don't need to mess around with the tension. And I think probably once in all my time I've had to mess with the tension. Other than that, I just don't think about it. It goes through lots of thick layers. So when I made my sienna coat, which was made in a thick twill, no problem whatsoever. I'm going to be making jeans on it very soon, and I don't foresee any problems there. These may or may not be reasons for you to splurge on a new machine, but all I can talk about is from my own experience, and I absolutely love my machine. If I had to sell stuff to get by, that would be the absolute last thing that I sold. I will be doing a focus video on this machine very soon, so do hit that subscribe button if that interests you. Let me know down below which of these you agree with, which ones you don't agree. We don't all have to agree, that's absolutely fine. But I would be intrigued, and I'd also like to know, what is your smartest purchase that you've made in sewing? I think there's going to be a lot of different answers, and I'd be really intrigued to see if there's any recurrent themes running through your comments. So if you like this video and you'd like to see more like it, let me know by hitting that like button. Leave me that comment down below, hit the subscribe button and share the video out by all means. Until next time, happy sewing, stay safe, bye for now.